Konnichiwa, minaboku wa Jeremy desu. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. And it is Monday, so again, it is another day of Sailor Moon Crystal episodes. If you hear other noises and stuff in the background, don't worry. We're just doing some renovations downstairs to the bathroom, so that's why I'm upstairs. And also because it's really, really nice outside, so I just figured I'd do it up here today. So, wearing my Animaniacs-esque Animaniacs shirt. So there you go. We got Ash, Goku, and Sailor Moon, of course. So, okay. Today we are talking about Act 30, Infinity 4, Sailor Uranus, Haruka Tenoh, and Sailor Neptune, Michiru Kaoih. Now, the theme of this episode is kind of new. That's the little subtitle I would put on it, just new in general, because we got a new theme song. Well, it's the same theme song. New singing, a new instrumental of the theme song. And then we have a new ending theme song. And then we have new transformations and all that kind of stuff, but we'll get to that in a little bit here. So, basically, it starts out very, very similar to how the manga is, just continuing on from where the last episode was, where, of course, Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus appear, and they introduce themselves. And they're like, oh my god, new Guardians, holy crap, we didn't realize, even though that there's other planets in our solar system, that they would have, you know, the same names of these people. So, anyway,
mischief.
uh-oh, there's a ferret that's on the loose up here now. Dante. He's got his fur back, by the way. Anyway, so, Sailor Uranus tells them that it's not for them to know, they don't need to know anything, and they don't want to work with them. They're just basically going to go off and do their own thing, and of course the Inner Senshi are all like, hey, well, we should work together. And that's basically when Uranus attacks them with world shaking and then takes off. And, well, just before that part, Sailor Neptune starts playing her violin, which apparently has this magical ability to create rock classical metal kind of music out of just the violin, including the drums and all that kind of stuff, so that's pretty damn interesting. Anyway, so they get attacked and then they disappear, and then they end up back at the Crown Game Center just after the theme song plays, which is the same theme song, New Moon Nikoi Shite, but instead of being sung by Yakushimaru Etsuko, who wrote the song, and was also responsible for that horrible rendition of Otome no Policy in the Sailor Moon tribute album, it was sung by Horie Mitsuko, which was the original voice actress for Sailor Galaxia. So that was a little interesting thing there. And of course it was just a little bit different at the beginning, mostly with the little music box part, but the rest of it was pretty much the same. So anyway, we knew this was going to happen. They announced that there was going to be 3 different renditions of the opening and that there were going to be 3 different ending themes for this season, which is really weird because, I mean, it's not that dissimilar from what they do to a lot of other series these days, where they'll have like a couple of different endings and stuff, but usually that's for series that have like hundreds of episodes and they break them up like every 50 or 60 episodes. Yeah, there's a new opening singer and a new ending song for every 4 episodes of Sailor Moon Crystal Season 3, apparently, because there's 12, so it's going to be weird. But it kind of works, and we'll get to that a bit later. So basically everything is the same. They start talking about who these people potentially are, and of course Luna and Artemis already know who they are. They're Senshi from the Outer Limits, who were never supposed to interact with the Inner Senshi of the Silver Millennium. Their job is basically just to protect from the outside, and not ever come into contact. They're just to stop everybody, like outside intruders, from coming into the Silver Millennium, and they were forgotten about basically when the Silver Millennium was destroyed and everybody was reborn on Earth. Luna and Artemis didn't think that they would be reborn as well, but there's obviously some kind of bigger crisis than when Queen Beryl was there and when the Black Moon family was there. So anyway, Usagi, Chibiusa, and Mamoru go walking along, and Usagi's thinking to herself, you know, there's no way that they can be enemies, and then Chibiusa actually vocalizes it, because she realized that the mirror that Sailor Neptune had is the same one that Michiru had in the helicopter when she took her home the other day, and so they know that Sailor Neptune has one of the 3 talismans that they've all been dreaming about that is supposedly going to bring about the destruction of the world. Okay. So they're going along, they go to Mamoru's house, and all 3 of them are sleeping in bed together. And Mamoru holds Usagi's hand, and then he has a dream of this figure that is going to destroy everything. Kind of standing in the middle, basically, the picture that they have here is the middle of the Mugen Academy, which is now basically destroyed, and then you can see the three buildings, the Kaoih, the Tenoh, and the Meioh buildings, all lying in ruins around it as well. So he's like, are you the deity of destruction? And then he wakes up, and Usagi wakes up, and they realize they've had exactly the same dream. And then it switches over to Rei in the shrine, and she's talking about how one talisman is Sailor Neptune's, of course, but there's 3 talismans altogether, and they have to find where the other ones are. So the next day, Usagi is up, and she's waiting for Mamoru as she's kind of just daydreaming. And someone comes up behind her and puts their hands around her eyes, and she turns around thinking it's him, but it's actually Haruka in Haruka's male form. Now, this is actually really well timed, actually. The whole thing of Haruka being male or female, and Usagi actually asks her, she's like, are you male or are you female? Kind of very current with the whole thing of the transgender issue going on. So it's nice to see a little positive spin on it as opposed to all this negativity that's going on up in the United States anyway. Not so much worried about the rest of the world, but it's just nice to have that little kind of positive note on there. So she's sitting there talking to Haruka. She calls her out for being Sailor Uranus. She's like, you smell the same, I can smell the wind on you. I didn't realize the wind itself actually had a scent, but apparently it does. And Haruka is like, I wish that we could meet under different circumstances. And is it really important whether I'm a man or a woman? Blah, blah, blah. And then she kind of leans in for a kiss, and then Mamoru comes along, and he's like, hey! And then Haruka's like, oh, the prince is here, and then kind of the wind starts blowing, and you see these leaves, and this one really big leaf comes down, and all of a sudden Haruka's gone. So apparently gigantic leaves that are human size flow around in Tokyo, which I didn't see when I was there, but just pointing that out. So Usagi starts crying all of a sudden, and Mamoru was kind of put off by this whole thing. So next scene is Chibiusa going to the arcade, and in the manga, Motoki's there working, and she asks if Mamoru's there. He isn't. So they're like, well, what do you need help with? Because she needs help with her homework, and it's an art assignment where she has to make something out of clay. And she wants to make the legendary Holy Grail. And they're like, what's the Holy Grail that you're talking about? She's like, well, it was in my mother's room in the future. It was a thing that she used to have. And it was supposed to, when danger was around, then a power would well up from the Grail and grant strength to Neo Queen Serenity to be able to stop it. So she saw this picture, and she really wanted to create the same thing out of clay. And Diana explains the same thing. She also explains that they used to go into Neo Queen Serenity's room all the time, even though they weren't supposed to. There were a lot of artifacts and stuff in there. And then Chibiusa starts crying a little bit because she misses home. And they're like, well, do you want to go home? And she's like, sorry, my phone's ringing. I'm just going to ignore this. I'll call you right back, all right, Mom? Okay, bye. Here's my mom. Anyways, so she's talking about how she's going to be a soldier, and she promised her mother that she was going to practice really hard to be a guardian, and she doesn't want to let her down. So she goes off to Mamoru's house, where Usagi and Mamoru are sitting there really, really, really kind of quiet, and it's definitely, the silence is palpable. And Usagi's just trying to figure out what to say to him about everything that's gone on, and Chibiusa bursts in the door because the door was open, and she sits down and she's like, oh, something's definitely wrong here. And she's like, Mamoru's upset. And Usagi's like, oh, you could see that too. And she's like, yeah, it must have been something that you did. Maybe you cheated on him. And she's like, what? And then she's like, well, did I actually? With the kiss from Haruka, was that actually kind of cheating? And then Mamoru changes the subject. He's like, why are you here, Chibiusa? You have a reason. And she's like, yeah, I need help with my homework. And so Usagi's like, okay, well, I forgot about my English homework. I'm going to go home too. But Chibiusa stops her and asks her to help as well, and which catches Usagi off guard because she's like, you don't usually like me. Excuse me. All these interruptions. But she decides to stay anyway, and when they start talking about the Holy Grail, it lightens the mood a little bit, which is nice to see. Excuse me again. Dante, don't you knock down my camera. Like I said, there's a ferret running around, so if the camera topples over, it's probably because of him. Anyway, one sec. Oh my goodness. So, they talk about making this chalice, and they find a picture of it. Mamoru explains to them what this chalice is supposed to be about, the Holy Grail. Oh my goodness. And so they set to work making it. Now in the manga they send, or Usagi comes up with the idea to go get some jewels and stuff. And they send her out to go get them, but she doesn't actually have to go get them in this one. She just, in the episode, she just is there, and her and Mamoru work on putting this thing together, while Chibiusa kind of just watches. She doesn't actually do her homework, but... Oh my goodness. My apologies. So she just kind of, I think she kind of did this on purpose, you know, to get her parents back together and not so angry at each other. And then they're like, yay, we did it! And then they turn around and they're like, Chibiusa! And there she is, asleep on the couch. And they're like, oh, that's cute. Oh my gosh. So, basically Usagi takes that moment, like she turns around and sees Mamoru smiling, and he's smiling at her, and they realize, they're like, oh, this is weird, you know, why were we so mad at each other? So Usagi apologizes for being jealous about Michiru. Mamoru apologizes about being jealous of Haruka and realizes that Haruka has something that she keeps wanting to tell Usagi, but it's painful for some reason, and that's why Usagi picked up on that pain, and that's why she cried a little bit when Mamoru found her before. Everything's good, and then Usagi's like, well, I should wake up Chibiusa, we have to go. And he's like, oh no. You two could stay overnight. Bow chicka wow wow. Between him and Usagi, not so much Chibiusa, because that would just be wrong, but... Anyways, Chibiusa wakes up, proving that she was actually just faking it, and she's just happy that her and Diana were able to get their parents, or her parents, back together. Fast forward to Ami, and she's talking to them about, or to Usagi and Makoto the next day at school, about the exams and stuff that are going on, and Usagi's complaining about her exam marks and the fact that she has to do all these exams, and Ami's like, well, I keep doing these exams, but I keep getting beaten out by Yui Bito. And so she's like, I want to go to this prep school, and it's at around Mugen Academy and stuff, and I want to meet this girl. So she does, and she actually meets her, and Bito Yui is like, well, hey, you should join the school on a trial basis, just because it would be really great for you. You're a genius, just like me, and you know, we can get to know each other. So Ami's like, oh, okay. So instead of going back to the Crown Game Center, which she does in the manga, she just calls everybody on the command center thing, and she's like, hey, you know, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to kind of pick up where Usagi left off the other day, and I'm just going to kind of investigate it and see what's going on. And they're like, well, what if something happens? She's like, don't worry, I have my communicator, so whatever. So Ami goes to Mugen Academy, and she goes up to the 13th floor, which is the third-year science room. And she's looking at this galaxy that's just sitting there out in the open. And in the manga, Yui Bito is there waiting for her already, and then she sees the galaxy. But in the episode, just a slight change, she sees it, and then Yui comes up and touches her on the shoulder, snapping her out of this thing, or this trance-like thing where she felt like she was going to be pulled into this galaxy. So she's sitting there looking at this, and then Yui's like, I have to go to the next class, I can't skip it. So then it switches over to Magnus Kaoih Knight, who is watching Ami, who apparently that's how she gets these visions in the pool, is there's cameras around the school, and that's how she sees it, is in the pool. And so she's looking at this, and she's like, oh, I wonder if this girl has the blessings of a Sailor Guardian. And so Vilu appears, which is Yui Bito, one of the Witches 5. More powerful than Eugil and Mimet. And she's like, leave it to me, I'll find this out, and I'll get the power of the hostie for our great ruler. And so Ami feels this weird presence from the camera even before that happens, and then all of a sudden she throws a pencil at it, and the water goes psh, and they realize that Ami's up to something. So she races downstairs into the underground laboratories where there's no admittance. And Haruka and Michiru see her going down there, so they follow her. And Ami gets sees all these animal experimentations, and she sees the diamonds, and she's about to call the others when Vilu appears and has the students collect Ami and pull her upstairs and put her in a computer room where they're trying to brainwash her like the other kids for using Vilu's program of like nanobot things that pull out the Hostian and use the body of the people as vessels. So Haruka and Michiru appear, and they beat up some of the students, and in the ruckus, whatever, Ami jumps out the window and does a Mercury transformation as she lands into the pool, and then she jumps out and she's Sailor Mercury. So there's no transformation sequence. It's actually really, really well done, but then she takes that moment to do her over-the-top kind of like movements as she's saying her Sailor Mercury thing, which is totally fine. Now, at this point, before it goes any further in the manga, it was switched around. So this point is where Haruka and Michiru are beating up on the students, and they jump out the window too, and then Kaoih Knight comes in, but she's the president of the school, and yada yada yada, and Haruka and Michiru are like, well, we can't go here anymore, but that comes later on in the episode. So Mercury faces off against Vilu. She uses Mercury Aqua Mirage. Vilu uses her Mosaic Buster, which is, I think, the only one of the witches to actually call out the power, because there's Charm Buster that Mehmet had, and Fire Buster, which is what Eugil had, but they didn't use those in this part of the series. They did in the original series. And the Mosaic Buster wraps Mercury's body up with these nanobots that are slowly eating away at her body. And now in the manga at this point, this is when Sailor Moon and the others show up, and Vilu unleashes her demons, but Sailor Moon comes and uses the Moon Spiral Heart Attack. But in the episode, they didn't. Instead, they opted to have Mars and Jupiter come in and use Snake Fire and Coconut Cyclone, whereas Venus then grabs Mercury and saves her so the nanobots aren't eating at her anymore. And then that's when Sailor Uranus and Neptune appear. They do their transformation sequence, Haruka and Michiru. Basically, exactly the same as the original series, which is great. I'm glad that they're paying homage to it, but the music is different, and I'm kind of miss the old violin song that they played. I love that. That was like indicative of the outers of the original season, or original series. So I kind of miss that, but at the same time, I'm glad that they paid homage to everything else. And then they play this music that's just getting you ready for something that's coming up as Uranus and Neptune do their speeches. And then Uranus pulls out the Space Sword Blaster and uses it and says out loud that it is her talisman, so the others do hear it. And this time, unlike the original series where the Space Sword Blaster was kind of just a slice, I guess, of light, it's like miniature versions of World Shaking, I guess, that hit them. And it not only takes out the two diamonds, but it also takes out Vilu all in one swoop. So that's like one hugely powerful attack. So Sailor Uranus and Neptune are way more powerful in this series than they were even in the original one, which is really interesting to see. So Uranus and Neptune take off, and things pretty much end there and on the battlefront in terms of that part of the storyline. Then things switch over to the Kaoih University, which is a different one, that Motoki goes to with his girlfriend Reika, of course, and Reika's in the science department. And so she's like, hey, we're going for lunch, do you want to join us? And she's like, no, I've got mineralogy club today, I can't, so whatever. She's just about to go into the room, and she sees that there's somebody going into the lab beside them, and she's like, oh, someone's taking over that. And so she goes up and introduces herself to this lady with really long green hair. And she's like, oh, I'm from the second year science department, my name's Reika Nishimura, it's nice to meet you. And then the lady turns around and we see it's Setsuna, aka Sailor Pluto, and she's like, hi, I'm Meioh Setsuna, I'm a first year student in the science department, they're letting me help out in this lab. So that's setting things up for the next one, which is all about Meioh Setsuna / Sailor Pluto, and I'm really excited about it. And then we go into the new theme song, which is Otome no Susume, which means Maiden's Advice, by Misato Fukuen, which is Chibiusa's voice actress. It's very reminiscent to me of Otome no Policy, at least the way that the animation is. Like Chibiusa walking and running and doing all these things. It's basically Otome no Policy with a different song. It almost, to me, it feels out of place. I think it should have either been the ending theme for Sailor Moon R or Sailor Moon Super S, where it's more Chibiusa based. Or they should have had Hotaru in it. I think that would have made it more sense. But I guess it works, kind of. I don't know. But the Otome no Policy kind of parallel to it, to me, I guess, kind of makes it work in one way. But I still think it should have been for R or Super S. And then we are going to be getting a third incarnation of the opening theme song in the next... There's 3 more episodes of this one, and then it should start the next the one after that, which will finish off the series with the last 4 episodes. And that'll be the same song, New Moon Nikoi Shite, as sung by Momoiro Clovers, though. And then the ending theme will be Eien Dake ga Futari wo Kakeru, which is Only Eternity Brings Them Together, as sung by Tuxedo Kamen's voice actor, Kenji Nojima, which will be interesting because they've never had a theme song sung by the Tuxedo Kamen voice actor before. So, alright, all in all, it was very much like the chapter, with just a few changes, I think, that actually made it work better towards the end. Just a few little editing changes and all that kind of stuff, or just moving things around for more of a better flow. So, that was the episode in a nutshell. Let me know what you think about it. If you saw any changes and stuff yourself. I don't really have as many notes as I normally take, just because it was so similar. But I'm pretty sure that I hit on pretty much everything that I could think of, because I always follow along with the book and read it before I watch it too. So, Jamatte ne mina, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon. And now I'm orange. One thing I forgot to mention in my little video that I just did, so I'm doing it now that I'm downstairs, and I'm going to make my little, or put it up online, that I was looking, because they just released the first opening and ending theme, so New Moon Nikoi Shite by Yakushimaru Atsuko, and the ending theme by Sailor Uranus and Neptune, Junko Minagawa, and oh my gosh, I forget the other one, Sayaka Ohara, I think is her name, the Eternal Eternity. They just released those on CD, and I was looking for the next ones, because I thought they were going to release them all at once, but they're not, and I guess this makes sense. So May 25th, they're releasing a CD that'll have the version of New Moon Nikoi Shite as sung by Horie Mitsuko, Sailor Galaxia's voice actress, so the one that they had today on the episode, and the Otome no Susume as sung by Misato Fukuen. And then June 22nd, they're going to be releasing the final one, which is the third opening singers, which is Momoiro Clovers, same song, New Moon Nikoi Shite, and Eien Dake ga Futari wo Kakeru as sung by Kenji Nojima, because that's when that ending theme will be out. And it will... they will all have instrumental versions as well, and I'm sure they'll probably be at the karaoke stores and all that as well. But I just wanted to throw that in there just because, just in case. So, okay, now I'll see you guys next time. Jamatte ne.